Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video what I wanted to do was to answer a question that I got from one of you guys in a comment. I had one viewer actually ask me how did I record my screen in 60 FPS and what software that I use and how did I set it all up. And what I wanted to do, instead of just answering him directly, I wanted to make a video showing all of you guys how that I do this, and maybe this will help one of you guys out there that is looking into doing screen capture, or you are doing screen capture videos but you haven't found a method that works for you. I want to show you what I use and how that I set it all up. So I use a free program called Open Broadcaster, or OBS, and I have used this for a while now. And it's just a really great program. I haven't really had any issues with it, and it's free, which is pretty awesome. And on top of that, it is supported by the three major OS platforms. So that's Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. So it's definitely a widely used program. It's mainly used for doing live streaming because that's kind of what it was intended to do originally. Hence the name Open Broadcaster. But they also do have a screen capture, like a video recording, local recording function built in as well that will allow you to do 60 FPS video. So what I wanted to do today was just to show you how that I set it up and what settings that I use when I do my 60 FPS videos like this one right here. So this is the website that you're going to download this from. It's obsproject.com. You can go here and download the latest version. And once you download it and install and you open the program, this is what it's going to look like. So it's a very simple interface. It's very easy to learn. I'll just kind of go over the whole interface here and kind of show you what each of these things does very briefly, and then I'll go ahead and show you what settings that I have set up to do these videos. So down here at the bottom left, you have your scenes, you have your sources, your audio mixer right here, your scene transitions, and your controls. So if there's not already a scene created, what you're going to want to do is just click on the plus button right here and enter a name into this scene and click on OK. I'm not going to do that because if I do, the screen will switch over to another scene and it will go black. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on cancel. Then what you want to do is come over here to sources, and sources is where if you click on this plus button here, you can add a wide variety of sources. You can add one to capture a specific window or a specific game, but if you're doing screen capture, it's generally good just to have one for your monitor or your display capture. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and click on add a new display capture, and I already have like two in here, but I'm just going to go ahead and just create another one just to show you how this works. So I'm just going to click on OK, and what we'll do is come up with a window allowing you to choose which display that you want. So I have two different displays hooked up to my PC, but display 0 is the one that I want to capture. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and choose. So I'm just going to click on OK, and now we are on display 3. These are all the same, so I'm just going to go ahead and remove these because I just don't need all those extra ones. So yeah, here we are on my display capture. Next up is your audio mixer. We'll get into this a little bit later. I do want to go over the settings. Scene transitions, again, that's mainly for if you're doing streaming and you want to switch between scenes. And controls is where you can start streaming, start and stop recording, go into studio mode, all of that. And all of these, by the way, can be mapped to a specific key. So if you like doing keyboard shortcuts, you can have that all set up as well. So that's basically a general overview of the interface of the program. What I'm going to do now is go into the settings, so up here in File and Settings, and I'm going to show you how that I have this all set up for my needs. So right here under the General tab, there's not really a whole lot that you will have to modify. I didn't really change a lot of this. The only thing I changed was the theme. When you first open OBS, it's most likely going to look like this. And you can keep it that way if you want on this white theme, but I like to keep it on the darker gray/black theme. But there's a few different other themes in here. There's this one right here that makes everything look a little bit more flat. There's this other one here that just adds like a different feel and look to the program. So you can change this to whatever you want. To your liking, but all of this you're not really going to have to change for doing videos. So the next tab we have the stream tab. I'm not really going to be messing with this because this is again for if you're only doing live streaming is when you're going to have to mess with this, so I'm not going to really bother with it right now. We're just going to go ahead and move on to the output tab. So in the output tab here, you've got a few different tabs up here. You've got streaming, recording, audio, and replay buffer. We're going to go ahead and once again skip over streaming, go ahead to recording, as this is where most of your settings are going to be modified. Now, first off, your screen is probably not going to have all of these options right off the bat. You are going to have to change the output mode from simple to advanced. So go ahead and do that. and once you change it to advanced, you'll see all these options open up here. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is set up our recording path, which will basically tell the program that, hey, this is where we want to save our final recording file to once we're done, and once we hit that stop recording button. So you see I have mine go to my D drive, which is my data drive, and into my YouTube folder, but it's going to, by default, have it set up to your C drive, and if you have an SSD like me, you're probably not going to want that because some of these files will be pretty large because they are raw recordings. So you're going to want to go ahead and change that to, whatever drive or whatever folder, if you only have one hard drive, that works for you, so that you can easily find these files later on. For the recording format, I would recommend keeping it at MP4. The reason for this is just because MP4 is a very widely used file format, and it's very easy to work with in the majority of video editing softwares out there. But there are a few different options you can choose from. You can choose from like FLV, Wave, I think, and a few other formats. So if you don't think MP4 is going to work for you, or it will not work for you, you got a few other options, again, like FLV and Wave, that you can record to, depending on your needs. For the audio track, you can see it supports up to 6 audio tracks. So there's a lot of different audio devices you can have in here. I just keep 1 and 2 checked. The reason for this is because I like to have my audio narration and my system audio recorded on 2 separate tracks so that I can edit them separately and change the volume of them individually during editing. So if you want to have that, I'll show you how to set that up later in the video. That's going to be moving back to that audio mixer that I mentioned before. But yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and choose 1 and 2. If you're not worried about everything being on 2 separate tracks and you just want 1 just for simplicity's sake, you can go ahead and choose just the 1 there. But you can have up to 6 devices if you want to, because there's a lot supported by this program. So next up we have the encoder right here, and what the encoder does is it will specify basically what device is being used to encode your video in real time when you do recording or streaming. I have found that for me the NVENC H264 encoder works the best, and what that will do is put all of the encoding processes on your graphics card rather than your CPU. The default option here is going to be X264, which will only use your CPU for the encoding process, and that may work really well for some people, but for me, because I have a high-end graphics card, I just kind of like to put the strain on that rather than my CPUs. It kind of just gives me a little bit better performance when I'm doing these videos. If you have an AMD graphics card, you'll see something like AMD Radeon something or other encoder in here that will show up instead of the NVENC one. So you want to choose that. I would recommend starting out with that, seeing how it works for you, and if you don't like the way it's coming out for whatever reason, go ahead and switch back to your CPU, which is X264. So that is, the option that I use. And for the rescale output, this is also very useful as well. So I don't mess with this at all because I have a 1080p monitor and I want to record a 1080p video. But if you have a 4K monitor, or maybe even like an 8K monitor, something like super high-res display, but you only want to record your video in 1080p, you can choose that right here. So you can kind of have the output rescaled down to 1080p. For your video. This will also work if you want to, if you have a 1080p monitor like I do and you want to record in 720p, you can set that up in here as well. So that gives you an option to do that. Again, I don't mess with it because I have a 1080p monitor and I want to record a 1080p video. So I don't have to mess with it at all. Next up, if we move down here, is your rate control. I would recommend keeping this at constant bitrate, which is CBR, but you've got a few other options like variable bitrate, CQP, and lossless. I would not recommend keeping it on lossless because it will just create a very, very large file size because no quality will be lost, which is great, but that comes at a cost on your disk because you're going to have a lot of space being taken up. So I would not recommend, using lossless, and anyway, if you're uploading this to YouTube, the video is going to be compressed anyway, so there's no reason to do a lossless recording. So I keep it on CBR and I keep the bitrate at 40,000. The reason I have it at 40,000 is because I have a very high-end computer. I have a 7700K CPU and a GTX 1070 graphics card. So I know that my computer can handle a 40,000 bitrate. But if you have like a lower-end machine, I would recommend maybe starting out at like, 30,000, maybe even 40,000, and just kind of, doing the recording, seeing how it goes. If you start getting like a message down here at the bottom left that says encoding overload, please check settings. Then I would recommend going back in here and bumping it down. So, start at 40,000, go to, 30,000, 20,000, and seeing where you can find that good sweet spot for your hardware. I found that's at 40,000 because that provides excellent quality, and it does not put a strain on my system, really at all. I don't notice any slowdowns or anything when I'm doing like my normal stuff that I do in my video tutorials and my video screen captures. The keyframe interval you want to keep at 0. I keep all of this stuff, so the preset at default, profile at main, level at auto. You want to use 2-pass encoding. You want your GPU at 0 and your B frames at 2. And those are all of the settings that I have in my recording tab. This is what I use, this is how that I have it set up. Next up, we're going to move to the audio tab. So the audio tab here, this is where you can, again, set up those 6 tracks. You can choose the individual bitrate of all of them. You see that just because I have these 2, I keep it at 320 audio bitrate, just because that's the highest that OBS can do. So I just keep it at that. You can obviously change that if you want to. And for the for the name, you can give each one of these tracks an individual name. So I have one that I have my microphone on as mic, and I have the track number 2 as system because that is my system audio. So there's not really like a whole lot of setup in here, and even at 128, it will still work just fine for you. So that is how I have my outputs settings set up in there. Next up is the audio tab, and I didn't really mess with a lot of this either. I kept most of it at the default settings, so the sample rate at 48 kilohertz. The channels at stereo, and most of this other stuff at default, as you can see. So there's not a whole lot of setup in here. For the video tab, this is where you can also set up your downscaled resolution and your downscale filter. So I don't really mess with this at all because, again, I'm not doing any sort of downscaling. You also have a downscale filter, so I would recommend keeping it on the Lands Coast Sharpen Scaling 32 samples. Which I believe is the default, and it works the best for me. I haven't really had to mess with this. And for common FPS values, this is where you can choose what frame rate your video is going to be in. So if you want a 60 FPS video, you want this to be 60. If you want a 30 FPS video, you want it to be 30. If you want a 25 or a 2997, 5994 video, this is where you can choose all of that in here. It's got all those options set up, but for me personally, I want these videos to be in 60 FPS, so I'm going to make it 60. So this is where you have that ability to set that up. Under hotkeys, this is where you can kind of customize, specific key functions. So you can map a certain key to do a certain function. So you see I have the start recording and stop recording as F9 and F10. So when I press F10 right now, I'm not going to do it because it will stop the recording. Same with F9, it will start the recording when I have this program open. But you can have this set up for start and stop streaming. You can set up your replay buffer, mute and unmute your microphone. So a ton of different options in here for you to set up if you like doing keyboard shortcuts and hotkeys. So that is where you can set that up. And last but not least, we have the Advanced tab. And this is where you can kind of set up more options about the program. So the first one right up here is the process priority. And what this will do is tell, if you have this set up to high like I do, it will tell Windows or whatever that your operating system is to give the OBS process, give it more system resources, allocate more system resources to it, and put it at a higher priority than all the other processes that you have running on your system. So I found that just doing that seems to work the best. You can obviously keep this at normal. I wouldn't really recommend putting it below normal because you may experience some problems, but I would just recommend keeping it at high. For the video renderer, I did have to mess with this a little bit, to be honest, to get the best quality that I wanted. So I have found that the best options for me is for the render, you want Direct3D 11. For the color format, you want NV12, the YUV color space 709, and YUV color range full. Audio monitoring device, this is where you can kind of say what headset or what type of speakers that you want to monitor your audio with. I just keep it at the Windows default audio. File name formatting, this is where you can specify a format. You see you've got all these different variables here, so you can kind of customize what name that you want the final file to be when you finish recording. I just keep this as the default because It just works fine for me. It doesn't really matter what the name is because I'm just going to rename the video anyway. And then you have the option to overwrite if the file already exists. So if you want to do that, you've got that option right here. And pretty much all this other stuff, stream delay, automatically reconnect, and network, this is all for if you're doing streaming, so it doesn't apply for us because we're doing a recording. So that is how I set up my settings. The last thing that I want to show you is how that I get my audio on 2 different tracks. That is done through your audio mixer right here. So what you can do is click on either of these gears right here and go to Advanced Audio Properties, and this will bring up a window basically telling you all of the different audio devices that you have, what volume that you want to have them at, what panning you want, so you want to have it in the center, sync offset, audio monitoring, and tracks. So I have my mic aux, which is the main microphone that I'm using right now for narration, to be only on track number 1, and I have my desktop audio to be on track number 2. This is only for if you want to have your audio from your microphone, your audio from your system on 2 separate tracks. That is pretty awesome. That is how that I set up all of my stuff, and yeah, that is pretty much all that I have to say for this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, definitely be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe down below if you want to see more videos like this in the near future. Be also sure to drop me a comment letting me know if these settings work for you, what settings that you guys use. I would love to hear what settings that you guys are using in OBS or whatever other screen capture program that you guys are using. Guys, again, that's all that I have to say. I just want to thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.